How are you, everyone? I'm so happy to be back to Karachi every time I come here. It was the first city I've been to in Pakistan, and it's my favorite one. I know people from Lahore and Islamabad will hate me, but it's still my favorite one. And I want to give a special thanks to the people from, I want to sponsor United Foods, because yesterday they fed me. That was great. I don't know if the team is here this morning, but they were absolutely fantastic. Anyway, let's start. This is an image you can see on the screens of what people usually put on TV shows, on presentations about what the future should look like. I don't even know what future is. I mean, this is, I don't know, it's a corridor with some lights and there's a robot coming and it's very hopeful, and that's what you usually get when people talk about the future. This is what you actually get. This is in Bangkok Airport. You see it also smiles. I don't know what really it does. It's probably actually cleaning the floor. That's Bangkok Airport. The reality, however, is this. This was filmed, I think, in Seoul Airport. This guy is destroying all the self-checking machines, as you can see on the screen, because he's unhappy. So what's going on? You know, there's always a future we're being promised, the reality that we actually have to deal with, and then we're frustrated. That's what I've been doing pretty much all my life, not being frustrated, but trying to solve why are we expecting and what actually are we getting. I started my career doing startups in the 90s. Yes, I'm that old, a few of them. And since then, I've been dealing with products like this and helping other companies understand what actually is happening. So this is a bit of the topic today. My name is Papadimitriou, as you very correctly said earlier. It's always fun in an airplane because people are very afraid to see all these letters. Actually, there's no wrong way of saying it. I am, as my name doesn't say, I'm Swiss. I was born and raised in Switzerland, in Geneva. But yes, my father was Greek. My late father was Greek. My mother was actually from Finland. So the joke goes as a Greek, I dodge my taxes. As a Swiss, I hide the money in a bank. And as a Finn, I can basically fund Christmas with the money that I dodge in Greece and put in a bank in Switzerland. But basically, the other story is that I have multiple passports. They're hidden in a safe in Zurich, and my real name is Jason Bourne. No, obviously not. You can simply call me Paul. I think it's always easier. So the questions I always ask is, who are we? Because, of course, this is our basis. It happens for companies and for people. You know, it's our identity. Where do we come from? Who are we? It's very important. Where do we want to go? That's the future. That's the goal. If you're a company, what are your goals? Where are you trying to lead to? If you're a person, it can be personal development. And of course, the third question, the most important, is how do we get there, right? So these are the types of questions I always ask. Basically, I deal with myth and tools. Myth is the stories we tell about ourselves, the stories we tell about our companies, our brands. And tools, of course, is the technology, is what we invent to actually achieve those tools. This is what I've been doing for way too long now, as I said, since the 90s. And today, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to comprehend the future. What is the future? How do we understand the future? I'm not going to tell you what is the future, but I've seen too many people try to forecast the future where actually it's obviously impossible to do so. This is just a bragging slide just to show you that I actually work with a lot of companies. You can see a lot of airlines, fintech. These are my major ones, but there's others as well. So the first thing that we have to do when you think about the future is looking ahead. I know it feels like a very cliche, and I'm opening a door that is already open, but most people, and this is why I took this slide, most people when they drive, they don't look at the end of the tunnel, they look at the bonnet. There's actually scientific studies that show that people when they drive, they look just right ahead, they don't look far ahead. And that's something that happens a lot. What happens when you do that is you miss potential obstacles, but also potential opportunities. You miss how the road is actually going to go. You cannot predict the road. Of course, I understand this is the limit of my analogy, because if you take that road every day, at some point you know how it drives. But even though, maybe that day there's an accident and you don't see it because you look too much at the bonnet. So that's the first thing you have to do when you think about the future. You have to look ahead. The robots, if you don't do it, you're going to miss that. The robots are already here. You saw very briefly on the screen our friend, the Terminator. This is what we've been described when we were growing up. Obviously, that didn't happen. And the robots are not here when we expect them. Most people expected maybe the first slide you saw earlier today with that about like happy robots that will help us in our daily lives. Maybe it will happen, I don't know, but they're already here. We just heard our previous speaker talk about Amazon. This is not Amazon, but this is a company, a French company called Exotech. I've met them actually last week at Goldman Sachs in New York. They already do these fulfillment centers. These robots are already there dealing and helping humans, augmenting humans, and sometimes, of course, replacing humans as well. These are the types of companies that exist. But if you were thinking 20 years ago about where the robots would arrive, very few people will tell you, oh, they're coming for fulfillment centers, for example. Since Doug talked about healthcare, I lost both my parents from cancer, and now you also have robots that actually help do very precise surgery on cancer, and this is very promising. Something that also, if you had asked anybody 30 years ago, would have again thought about a Terminator. So you have to look ahead to actually maybe not miss that it's already happening. VR, AR, augmented reality is another thing that a lot of people used to talk about 10 years ago. Oh, it's going to change our lives, and basically it was only in gaming that we saw it. Obviously, it's now happening. For instance, one of the industries I work with, airlines, so there's a lot of actually training being done already with these tools. Of course, with the upcoming Apple Vision Pro, the currently just released Meta Oculus, the new ones. This is already happening. It might not be happening in your daily lives, but these are maybe trend lines that we can look at. Again, if you don't look ahead, you may be missing them. Of course, AI. AI is there, but not where we expected it. If I had asked most of you, where do you expect AI to happen, none of you would have said it's going to be a chatbot. Most people thought it would be some kind of entity, maybe again the first slide that shows some kind of robot that talks to you and maybe helps you do breakfast in the morning or helps your kids go to school, but nobody would have thought about a chatbot. Again, because we cannot predict the future. We can only look ahead and try not to miss it when it arrives, but not predict it and not forecast it. The other thing, and of course this is a quote from Steve Jobs, he said, you can only draw points backwards. You cannot draw them forwards. This is what I just said. You cannot actually predict the future. You can maybe have some trend lines, but you have to draw backwards. And we have to use this. We have to use our experience to see where it's coming from. This is what I do in my work as well. You have to assess why are the reasons you're doing what you do in your company, in your personal life, why. And you have to look in the past as well. Not to obsess about the past, but to look, because of course there's always a lot of lessons, and it seems that we keep forgetting the lessons. Otherwise, we again miss the potential tomorrows. One of the examples, of course, is right now we know, and it's not fun, we have an energy crisis. I know you have it here. We have had very high inflation, and of course we have hot conflicts. But that happened in the 70s as well, the decade I was born in. These are, I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but the lessons we drew back, for a lot of people, I'm not talking about maybe the youngest of you here, but a lot of people are very surprised it's happening again. No, it actually, there's some rhythm. It keeps happening. We need to not forget the lessons of the past. And if you're an organization, the same happens. Way too many times, I see companies that have done a mistake only 2 years ago to only repeat it again and again and again. It's not only about turnover. Is that because we tend to forget the past? We tend to think too much about the now. And by the way, this is something that happens a lot in emerging countries. Emerging countries like Pakistan have a tendency to think about the future in the next 5 days. They have a harder time thinking about the future in the next 10 years. And now, the rest of the world is actually more similar than emerging countries, because when the crisis happens, it's something that happens with humans very much. When we are in a state of panic, or at least in a state of anxiety, our sense of vision kind of goes a little bit narrower. And again, that's what leads to? It leads to us missing some of the cues from the future. For instance, another thing that we miss. Nobody could have predicted that now people would shop on TikTok. I always remember the first time I saw the Chinese version of that. I was sat in a subway in Beijing, and there was this lady next to me, and she was doing this with the phone, and I'm like, what the hell is she watching all these streams? And it's the speed of which was actually something that was really impressive to me. Now, of course, everybody is used to just flip on their phones to do, I don't know if you use TikTok, but it's really, really fast. The consumption is really fast. And this is something you can only realize when you look backwards, that actually everything is getting faster. The commerce is getting faster. Entertainment is going faster. Everything is going faster. And that's a trend is, when you drive, I don't know, I say that, I don't even have a car living in London. When you drive, you can only see if the road goes slightly up or slightly down if you actually look in the back, the mirror. If you don't, you tend to think actually you're going flat. But actually sometimes it is only, and the same thing here. If you don't look at the past, you cannot realize how faster we are going. If you take your new phone that you just got, I don't know, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's a Samsung, I don't really care. And if you compare it to last year's model, you say, well, it's almost the same. Well, actually, if you compare it to 10 years ago, you realize how crazy the evolution has happened. So you need to keep always thinking about the past to realize how fast we're getting. And again, everything is going faster and faster and faster all the time. Disruption is speed. Whether we like it or not, disruption is speed. I'm not making a judgment, I'll make it a bit later on. The other thing, of course, when you drive, you don't only have to look ahead and look in the rearview mirror, you have to look around. And one of the things a lot of the companies I work with miss is competition. Competition is everywhere. It's not, if you work in energy, your competitors are not only the other companies that work in energy or other countries' companies that work in energy. Competition is absolutely everywhere, whether you're B2C or B2B, by the way. Here, let's look a little bit of what's actually happening. First of all, ideas and talents are everywhere. I don't need to tell you that, but I need to tell that a lot to people who live in the West. I don't like that term, but that's the way. Because the West has been being disrupted in the past 30 years. When I came out of university in 1998, when I came out of university, the pool of talent, the pool of people that I was competing with was maybe 500 million people. The pool of talent, if I were to come out of university now, the same age today, would be basically 5 to 7 billion people. If you're in the West, and if you're old, you're still thinking with the framework of I have to deal with 500 million people, which is why people can be very condescending when they're in the West, especially coming to emerging countries. But they're missing it. They're missing that the world has changed. The talent is absolutely everywhere, from Nigeria to Pakistan to Venezuela. You can find peoples and talent absolutely everywhere. The second bit, if my slide would actually go, is the emerging middle class. I know right now it's a fraught moment because of the crisis I just mentioned that we all experience, the cost of living crisis, the hyperinflation that we're living in. But we've been pushing, let's say the world has been raising the standards of so many people. More than 2 billion people have been emerging and part of the middle class now. And especially, most importantly, half of them are actually women. And I think many people said that yesterday. If you don't have women as part of the economy, you're not going to grow, because women are the most important key part of a growth and a success path in most countries. And this is something that has been happening, of course, especially in Asia, because they've been, in China in particular, they've been the reason why we have these massive numbers. India currently is also doing it, and you guys are actually also doing it. So this is something that the planet is absolutely for everyone, and there's opportunities for absolutely everyone. And then the urbanization of the world. It's of course something you live in Karachi, one of the biggest and most dense cities in the world. I love living in big cities. I used to live in Tokyo, I used to live in Manila, I now live in London. I love big cities because of energy, but the reason they are so successful, they're also dysfunctional sometimes, obviously, is because it's like the flu. I know it's not fun to talk about the flu after we had COVID, but ideas and people actually go faster. They grab super linearity once you actually go in close groups. So if you, again, like the flu, if you live in the middle of nowhere, the chances of you getting the flu is very low because you don't encounter a lot of people. The same happens with ideas. If you are in clustered environment like we are in big cities, you will actually create more ideas faster and faster, which is why people tend to want to be in big cities for opportunities, and of course, Karachi is an example of that. So is that the future then, that robot smiling there on the slide that you see on the two screens over there? I don't think it is, but I don't know. What I know, however, it could be this as well. This is from Terry Gilliam movie, it's amazing. As you can see, the dude is working there and the ads are following him everywhere. That's something that, is that the future? Well, maybe you all have that experience on your phone. But I'm not even kidding. This is Emirates first class 777. They have these new virtual windows, and I work with airlines who would love the airlines to remove all the windows of the aircraft because it would make for a better aerodynamism of the actual aircraft, also less cost, and replace them. This is actually just 4K windows. You don't actually have windows. The reason I'm showing you this is that, okay, this is Emirates, and we know that Emirates is a classy airline. But imagine that being in an airline, I don't know, AirAsia, Spirit, I don't know, PIA, I don't know if they would do it, Ryanair in Europe. They will show you ads on the windows. They will not show you what's happening actually outside, right? So that could also be the future. I don't know. We'll see if that happens. But one thing that is very interesting as humans is another lesson I want to give you is that we get used to these kind of things very easily, right? We get used to new technologies very easily, more easily than we think. First of all, it's nothing to do with generation. Obviously, younger generation are born with a different foundation. I was not born in an era when we had phones. We didn't even have the internet on our phones. Actually, it was my first startup. We put the internet on phones in the end of the 90s. But the point is, no matter who you talk to, no matter the foundation you start with, you get used to things and to technology very, very easily. People always say, oh, they're young with their phones. And I look at all of you, and you all have your phones, and you do the actual same thing. We got used to phones, and that's, of course, the easiest example, very, very quickly. And so it doesn't matter which generation. And by the way, the generation I always love, I don't know why the guy who invented the term Gen X started at X, because now we're already running out of letters. We're Gen Z, I don't know what the hell we're going to call the next one. Anyway, Gen A, and then we'll start over. The thing that is very important for humans is that we normalize everything. We get used to things very, very quickly. The example I just mentioned briefly earlier, COVID, the first 2 months everybody was freaking out, and now it became very quickly normalized. Even the lockdowns, even the restrictions became normalized. We might not have liked them, but we normalized it. And this is how it's one of our survival instincts as human beings. If there's something new happening, we integrate it, we normalize it, and we live on. We have no choice. But we do the same with everything. I call it, it's a process that actually is both great and both sometimes dangerous. The way, for instance, the fact that you have a newer phone every year, 2 years, 3 years, you get used to that. So your expectations keep going higher because you don't want to go back, so you have a new thing, and you get used to that, and then you say, oh, it's boring, I want the new thing, and you want a new thing, and you want a new thing, because we normalize stuff. And it's actually very hard for some companies because they keep to iterate with new products, and every time they release a new product, after not only 3 to 4 months, people are already bored about the new product, they didn't expect the next one, especially, again, with consumer technology. You know, I'm talking to gentlemen, to the gentlemen in this room, you know what an oven is? You put food in it, and it becomes hot, right? I'm sorry for that sexist remark for men, but this is usually the case. How many times do you go in front of an oven and say, wow, this is a marvelous piece of technology? We don't do that. That's the thing, because we normalized it. The first household we ever had an oven or a microwave oven. I remember when my parents bought the microwave oven in the 80s, I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever. I can put the button in 1 minute, it's hot. We don't care anymore because we normalize it. This is one of the biggest drivers when you think about your consumers, or your employees, by the way, no matter where you are, we normalize stuff very, very, very quickly. And as I said, competition is everywhere. We have a choice. Every single choice is being normalized. Everything we do is in competition with other stuff. Here are just stuff we do. You can decide now, the fact that you're here deciding to listen to me, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm not boring you, or the fact that you decided to come to this conference, you could have done a million other things. You could have decided to spend a coffee with a friend, to go to the office. And as companies, we tend to think that the competition is only, again, what I said earlier, if I'm United Foods, my biggest competitor is maybe Nestle, I don't know. The thing is, no, it's every possible human activity that is in competition with you. So when you think about your consumers, even if you're B2B end up being a consumer at the end, you have to think that they always have multiple choices of what to do with their time, and it could be using your product or not. And again, even if you're not someone who has consumers, direct-to-consumer responsibility or interaction, the fact that you think about your futures is, if somebody does something differently, how will it affect me backwards? The day people stop, I don't know, using horses and went on cars, if you're just the food provider for horses, you might not care about the consumer that goes on a horse or not, but you will be affected because people will not use, the people who breed horses might not use the food anymore, and then thus you're being affected. You always have to think in a chessboard like this, ahead of time. If this Well, yeah, there you go. The other thing we got used to this is that kind of stuff. I think it's even worse if you live in Europe. We have always like these ad blocks and whatever. We get used to everything. We would even get used, as I told you, to this guy working with the ads following him. And we got already used to this. ChatGPT, we already got used to this. I don't know if you've tried. I hope you do. You should. It's pretty actually fun, no matter the ethical outcome. It's already being integrated. And I know that companies, especially corporates, are much slower to adopt technology because, of course, they have to think about compliance and there's a lot of inertia. But this is something that is already, AI in that form of chatbot is already being normalized. The first 2 months were absolutely exciting, and now I'm using it. I have bots running in the background on my computer, my server at home, doing stuff for me. One of the first stuff it does, it actually replies to consumers automatically without me being there. It actually imitates my voice. Airlines already are already using it. It drives me nuts, to be honest. They're already using, instead of having, and I used to live in the Philippines, instead of having the first few questions being answered by someone in the Philippines, I said the Philippines because a lot of the call centers are based in the Philippines, a low paid worker answering your phone with, oh, when was my flight, when my flight was delayed, etc. They use now voice synthesizer based with AI, and they answer you very, very humanly. You can still see there's still that kind of suspension of disbelief, which is why it drives me crazy. By the way, if you want a trick, if you're ever on hold with one of these big companies, you actually shout and you insult them. I'm sorry to say that. I won't use the words on stage because I'm too polite. But usually the software actually listens to the words and sees that, that person is very angry, so we're going to redirect them to a human being. So even I never wait. I usually, as soon as they pick up, I start insulting, and then usually I get directed to a human being in the next 30 seconds. It works, trust me. I'm going to grab some water because I'm getting... So why are we not normalizing? Why are we not getting used to this? And why are we getting frustrated? The reason we are getting frustrated is because we are humans, right? We are relatively slow, no matter how fast we normalize stuff, and we want some comfort. Pardon me, as human beings, we want some comfort, right? We say we love technology, we say we love living fast, but we want some comfort. This is part of especially if you're middle-aged. I'm middle-aged. Am I more middle-aged? I don't know. Once you arrive at a certain point in life, you don't want, you're happy, you have a family, you have kids, stuff kind of works for you. You don't want the world to change every 5 minutes. You're like, can pause here? Can we just, this is perfect. And this is why most people that are middle-aged and top become more conservative. I'm not saying they vote conservative, you might want to, but they become more conservative because they want their world, they're pretty happy the way the things are, right? They might not understand their kids because they live in a different world, but they're like, this is pretty cool. Yeah, because we want some comfort. Everybody wants that. And this is the reason, because we want stuff to be comfortable, and we were promised it would work. And with technology, and that's very important, it might change in the future, but we will, and we are, as humans, we will forgive someone doing a mistake. Maybe not all mistakes, maybe not criminals, but we will forgive. If someone answers me, it gives me a wrong answer, I might be angry for a minute. I'm still using that analogy on the phone, but I'm like, yeah, well, she or he did a mistake. So thank you. It's more than this, actually. She or he did a mistake. If it's a robot, hence the person behind, you don't have that empathy for that. You don't have that empathy for the robot, and you will actually be much more angry against the robot, against the AI, etc. And actually, as a company, you need to know that, because I know that companies want to remove, because it's easier and less expensive to use technology instead of human beings for their frontline workers. But you end up in a society which is way more angry at times. Maybe it will change. Maybe our kids, or the kids of our kids, will consider AI and robots as equals as human beings. I don't know. I cannot tell the future. The only crystal ball I have is here in my head. That's about it. But the point is that for the moment, we don't forgive robots. We don't forgive technology which doesn't work. Look at the number of times you might be looking at your phone and something is not working. You're like, come on, it's not working. You will never act this way in front of another human being. But we do in front of technology. So, having said that, we have comfort. We have a lot of course, problems, inflation, climate, conflict, food shortages, etc. All this creates a lot of anxiety in us, right? And comfort, as I said, is survival. it's harder to look ahead when all of this happens, but we need to. We need to try not to be too narrow. And I'm dealing with a lot of companies right now. I can see that their vision has gone narrower, and it's a bit dangerous because then they miss actually what might happen and what might opportunities and challenges that are in front of them. The other thing is that, of course, in times of crisis, companies tend to stop investing in the areas they should. And all studies show that if you stop investing in the future, stop investing in your people, instead of investing in technology, you create what I call innovation inequality, where other people, other companies lift off and you don't, and actually then you lose markets. You need to prepare for that future. And the AI is taking over debate. I don't know if AI is taking over. I don't know if robots are taking over. Maybe they will. Maybe they will destroy a lot of jobs. I mean, probably actually they will. But at least get to try it and get to make sure you're prepared. Like, for instance, going to give you just one example. All my family are in the medical field. I'm the only black sheep, decided not to do that and work in technology. But it's true that if you have AI and if you're a radiologist, you know, my father was able to beat his first cancer. He got 3, the poor bastard. The first cancer because he was a doctor and he saw something on an X-ray and was like, this is not normal. And all these colleagues would say, yeah, no, it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. He said, no, he had a hunch. But now you replace that with AI, and the AI, let's say, it has the ability to see millions and millions of images of X-rays, and they can very quickly, in a few seconds, actually determine whether or not it might be something dangerous because it has all this knowledge. It's still science fiction, but it might happen one day. Well, what about the job of the radiologist then? Because if the AI does all this, what about the job of the radiologist? Same if you are an entry-level consultant, an entry-level legal person. What you do the first 2-3 years in a company, you basically do research. I know it's almost over. You do a lot of research. You do basically a lot of research. But if you have computers and AI doing that for you, are these jobs still existing? To be honest, I don't have the answer to that question. What I know is that we need to keep empowering people. This is what we are as human beings. I said earlier, myth and tools, is that no matter what, your role as people here is to try to empower other people. Empower your kids, empower your employees, empower your peers. You have to give them hope. Because at the end of the day, what makes us human, what makes us survive, and what makes us thrive are the stories we tell ourselves. The myth, whether it's our myth about our countries, about ourselves, about our families, these are all stories. The same way our ancestors did, they were gathering around the fire and they were telling a story about what happened that day. We need to keep doing that. We need to keep, of course, looking ahead, looking behind, looking around for sure, but we need to instill, and you need to instill that hope in others. You need to actually be heroes for others. You need to design that hope. And that's leadership, basically. And that's something that only we can do. That's one of the only way to actually prepare that future, no matter where the future goes. Companies are the best leadership, are the best prepared to face whatever will happen in the future. You have to embrace discomfort. Life is chaos. As human beings, we love to think there's an order. Life is absolute chaos. You have to embrace vulnerability, because resilience comes with vulnerability. You have to accept that, yeah, we will make mistakes, and yes, we will. I'm not perfect, whether it's, again, a person or a company. Accept that you might be doing stuff wrong, and then you become resilient. And embrace generosity, as I just said. You have to be a hero. Hero, and I'll finish with that. Hero is actually... in Greek mythology, hero is a lady who shows the light to Leandros. She actually keeps the light. A hero is not Iron Man or Superman or all the Marvel characters that are very fun to watch, but a hero is someone who shows the light. And that's what you have to be for others. You have to be a hero. You have to give that light to others because people are actually waiting. I'm no hero myself. I mean, I try to be from time to time, but this is how it feels like to try to do that. Life is chaos. I went in Macau to the highest tower you can actually jump legally, because you can jump actually in other places not legally. And this is how it feels like to be an entrepreneur. It's how it feels like to try to understand the future. You just jump and you'll figure it out on the way down. This is how I actually live my life, and it's actually how actually the truth is most of the time. So be the Pakistani heroes the world need, and on that, thank you very much. I'm Papadimitriou.